Jedi Squadron is a podcast run by the Anime Secrets website. Check us out at animesecrets.org for more anime, video game, tokusatsu, and now Star Wars content. Remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts today.
Hello, new Padawans, and welcome to the Jedi Squadron podcast. Here, you will be taking lessons in the many pieces of the Star Wars universe, whether it be the movies, animated series, video games, comics, and etc. This is your training into becoming a Star Wars fan as part of the Jedi Squadron. May your training go well, and may the Force be with you, young Padawans. What is going on, Star Wars Nation? This is the Jedi Squadron podcast presented by animesecrets.org. I'm your host, Nathan Desa.
And I'm Rizwan Merchant.
And today we are reviewing episode 3 of the Ahsoka series. This episode is called Time to Fly. Before we get started, we are recording this in the midst of the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild strikes. We want to stress that we stand with those who are on the strike. We support them, and we are not being paid to promote this show, nor are we doing this to promote the work of the greedy studios that have made this strike necessary. We do this in support of the hard work of those of the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild, without whose hard work shows like Ahsoka would not be possible. And in the case of Ahsoka, it literally wouldn't be possible because the leading actress, Rosario Dawson, is part of the Screen Actors Guild. So we want to make it clear that we stand with them and everything that they are protesting for, and we are not being paid to promote this in any way.
Yep. No, Riz and Nathan's are getting paid for this podcast.
With that being said, before we jump in, we did miss a section of the previous podcast for the first 2 episodes where I talk about some of the references and other things. That we're also going to go over the references in this third episode too, but there's actually quite a bit. So I'm just going to go over all of them. So for starters, we see a lot of ships from the animated series make their live action debut here. Baylan and Shin, they travel in a Beta class shuttle, which is also called a Jedi Ambassador shuttle. We saw that frequently in the Clone Wars series. I'm pretty sure I saw Obi-Wan use that shuttle at least once in Clone Wars, so that's pretty cool. We see in the hangar of the ship that Baylan and Shin attack, we see a few T-70 X-Wings. These are the starfighters of the Resistance in the sequel trilogy. They're the successors of the T-65s. Those are the X-Wings that the Rebellion uses. But the funny thing is we actually see a few T-65s flying in the Rebel fleet, so we can kind of assume that this is during an era where they're slowly phasing those out and bringing in the T-70s. There's a moment where Ahsoka uses her lightsabers to cut a hole to enter the temple, and we see her use the exact same move in the final arc of the Clone Wars to help her and Rex escape that Republic flagship. That was a pretty cool nod. The droids that attack Ahsoka are identified as HK-86 droids. We did see these assassin droids first in The Mandalorian, but the HK series was originally introduced in the KOTOR video game series. One of the playable characters is a droid called HK-47, so that's pretty cool. The ship, and we see it in this episode too, so this is like Ahsoka's primary ship. It's a T-6 shuttle. It's also referred to as a Jedi shuttle. We saw this in the Clone Wars. I do remember Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin using the same shuttle in the Mortis arc. And I can't remember what season of Clone Wars that was, but I do remember.
The Mortis arc was season 3.
Okay.
Why I know that, I have no idea.
Well, now, this is something that I love. When Ahsoka meets Hera, and we're actually going to see this again in this episode that we're covering, they actually meet on the Mon Calamari Star Cruiser Home 1, which originally appeared in Return of the Jedi. It was the flagship of the Rebel fleet under the command of Admiral Akbar, and it's basically the flagship of the New Republic fleet now. And we actually see them meet frequently in the very same briefing room where Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar briefed the rebels and our main characters on how they were going to attack the second Death Star. We see several green marked X-Wings, and it's possible that those are the X-Wings that are part of Green Squadron, which Hera actually led in an unsuccessful attack on Lothal in the last season of Rebels. During the scene where Sabine is going around on her speeder bike, she gets pursued by E-Wing escort fighters. These are the first time that they appear in live action. They apparently originally appeared in the Dark Empire comic series. They were new fighters created during the New Republic era, so fitting that they're introduced as New Republic ships here too. This is cool. When we see Sabine living in the abandoned control tower, we can actually see Ezra's collection of Imperial helmets. Because I don't know if we mentioned this in Rebels, but Ezra loved to collect helmets of like every single Imperial, like a Stormtrooper helmet, a Scout Trooper helmet, TIE pilot. In fact, I literally remember one scene where Zeb was beating up on a Stormtrooper and he holds up a helmet. It's like, hey, Ezra, do you have this one? You do? Okay. And then he just kills the guy. Like, and we get
that was a pretty great moment.
Yeah, we get to see that collection in the background. The map that Ahsoka obtains and is later stolen by Elsbeth, it's identified as a star map, and it actually operates very similarly to how the star maps work in the Knights of the Old Republic video game. That's pretty cool. I'm a huge Knights of the Old Republic fan. And for the record, yes, we're going to take a look at those games here on the Jedi Squadron podcast too, for anyone who's curious. Finally, to wrap it up, I know that there's a lot of references here, but Ahsoka and Hera travel to the planet Corellia to gain information from the New Republic. Corellia is actually the home world of Han Solo. It's established in Solo: A Star Wars Story. And to kind of go with the theme similar to Lothal, when we see Solo: A Star Wars Story, it looks like it's decayed and like in ruin. But now under New Republic control, it's a lot brighter and, like a bit cleaner. It's kind of similar to how Lothal under Imperial control and Rebels is like this dark, gloomy, like barren planet. And then all of a sudden, now that it's back under New Republic control, it's this bright and clean and like lovely looking world that people will want to vacation on. So,
well, Lothal in the early season 1 of Rebels was also bright and green. It got ruined over the course of 4 seasons by continuous and increased Imperial rule.
And largely because they established that Governor Price was in training to be governor, and she officially became governor in season 3 or whichever season she originally appeared in. So we could just assume
season 3.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because that's when, I don't know the exact time when Thrawn began doing this, but I know at some point in season 3 and 4, Thrawn began to do a lot more Imperial activity on the planet to begin his TIE Defender program.
Mm-hmm.
It's mentioned in the books, but it's not been super, at least as far as I've gotten in the books, it's not like I know exactly when he begins, like what episode it correlates to, but definitely it's coming, so I can see that being part of why Lothal started to deteriorate in how it looked.
Yep.
And at some point, we will begin reviewing the other Thrawn books. We already have recorded the first Thrawn novel reviews. That'll be coming out pretty soon. But we do have plans to review the other 2 in this trilogy.
Yep.
And then go back and look at the next trilogy that came out later, but it's set before all this stuff.
Yep.
So, a lot of Thrawn goodness coming your way in the next couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
Because side note, I am loving the second book, Nate. I don't know if you've begun reading yet, but oh my god, it's so good.
I'll have to get started on it soon.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
So anyway, to jump into now that I've kind of bored everyone with those Easter eggs that people like me love to focus on, we can now jump into Time to Fly. This episode is like 34 minutes, so it's much shorter than the previous two, which for the record is fine. I don't like how fans keep complaining about how like they did this with Kenobi and they did it with Bad Batch, how like the episodes get shorter and shorter. To that I just say these episodes are as long as the writers feel that they need to be, and that's okay. Like if it needs to be 30 minutes, it can be 30 minutes. If it needs to be 45 minutes, like we don't need to just needlessly pad these episodes out just for the sake of having more time.
Yeah, like I'd rather them have a shorter episode than have to be required to do 6 or 8 40-minute episodes because that's what the contract requires them to do.
Yeah.
Like if they have to do, all 30-minute episodes, but then the finale is like 2 hours long or whatever because that's what the finale needs, then great, awesome, let's go. But
Mhm.
I'm not going to complain about her. Well, episode 3 was only 30 minutes, but episode 1 was 40 minutes. It's like that Harry Potter meme where Dudley is saying, "But last year I had 37 presents. This year I
Mhm.
have 35." That's what the Star Wars fans sound like when they start going off like that, and I don't like
Exactly.
it. So let's not be a Dudley.
Yep. But they kind of summarize what happens in this episode. So we get a lot of Ahsoka and Sabine scenes. Ahsoka is once again training Sabine how to with her lightsaber training with using like wooden practice sabers, along with Hu Yang helping her out. Um, Ahsoka also talks about, trying to educate Sabine with the Force, during which he actually gives some pretty clever commentary that they're hinting that maybe Sabine, maybe she's Force sensitive, maybe she isn't, but she says that, like, the Force is in all of us. Like, everyone has the Force in them. And some people are just naturally born with it, but then there are others where it takes training and discipline, and even they too can partially use the Force, which I think is their way of trying to tread lightly on the idea of Sabine being Force sensitive or not. But
Well,
um,
to me, it harkens back to what Obi-Wan said in A New Hope, where he said the Force is in all of us. Everything around us has the Force,
mhm,
and that's a very true statement. That everything does have the Force within it, and that's how those that are more Force sensitive can feel their surroundings and do those incredible things that they do, like sense the entire planet of Alderaan vanishing in the blink of an eye.
mhm,
Like that's a force. That's because everything on Alderaan had force in it, so they can sense that going away.
mhm,
And likewise, Sabine has the force within her, but the question becomes: can Sabine utilize the force in a meaningful way, or is she just a dormant carrier of force characteristics, but she can't tap into it? And either way is fine. She doesn't have to be super force sensitive. And I'm honestly really happy. So I know last episode I commented that I hope they don't make her like a force sensitive person right off the bat. And so far I think they've been doing a great job
yep,
with showing Sabine struggling with this. And at one point Ahsoka even says, "I'm not trying to make her into a Jedi. I'm trying to make her be who she is.
yep,
Like be herself." And to me, that doesn't mean that she's going to become force sensitive. It just means Sabine has to figure out who she is on her own. Because the more I think about Sabine's character in Ahsoka, I almost get the feeling she only went down this path with Ahsoka as a kind of way to pay homage to Ezra and also to help Ahsoka more in her mind in a meaningful way. Because if she can be a force sensitive person, maybe Sabine thinks she can do more to help than if she was just with Ahsoka as a Mandalorian. But I think Ahsoka doesn't need her to be a Jedi or a Force sensitive. Ahsoka just wants her to realize who she really is. And I'm hoping that's the lesson we learn at the end of all this.
Yeah. And Sabine actually does try to use the Force to call a cup to her, but it doesn't work, which was
Yeah.
pretty cool. And it was actually a real funny scene how she gets called. Well, she tries it and it's silent, and then she has to get called away when they're coming in on the system, and she looks at that cup and she says, "You win this round." Like, I loved that. That is
Yeah,
so
that was pretty
Sabine.
great.
Um,
And I mean, Sabine is portrayed so well in this season. Like, oh my god, it's Sabine from Rebels all over again.
yeah, yeah. This actress was perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad that they didn't just try to. I mean, okay, I'm cool. Like, Rosario Dawson was already a pretty decent name before she got cast as Ahsoka, but she still gets the part done. I'm glad that they didn't try to just get some big name actress just for the sake of having like name recognition to play Sabine. They just picked who was perfect to play the role, and because, like I said, this actress. The only thing she had before that was of any meaningful was that she was a background character on The Greatest Showman. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, I'm glad, and I really hope that this actress goes on to do more things after this show. So
And I think this is, I might be wrong about this, Nate, but I think Ahsoka, the TV show, is the first time we bring animated series original characters, not into trilogies, to live action.
I would, yeah, I think so.
Well, okay, no, I'm wrong. Cad Bane was in
Well,
Book
yeah,
of Boba Fett, so no, I'm wrong. That's not
and if you
correct.
want to be
But
technical about it, Chopper was in Rogue One in a cameo.
I don't count that.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Chopper is a murder bot, and he is everywhere all at one time, and I love it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with that? Shoot it down.
But anyway, so we also get another side plot where Hera tries to convince the New Republic Senate to assist in Ahsoka's mission, but unfortunately, the New Republic is incredibly. So first of all, they think that Thrawn and by extension Ezra are dead. There's this one senator who I'll mention a little bit later who's kind of a jerk. Almost, and it when he mentions that Ezra is dead, it almost feels like he was stabbing Hera with a knife and then twisting it, like in a way, like
Hmm.
that was just horrible. But anyway, they refuse to help. And then while Ahsoka and Sabine are in hyperspace, they get taken out of hyperspace in Cetos, which is where Elsbeth's space station, the Eye of Sion, is located. And then they get attacked by a group of starfighters led by Sheen, and we get this really awesome space battle. But then their ship gets severely damaged by the Eye of Cetos, and they're forced to land on the ship on the planet and hide, and they're stranded until they can repair their ship. And the episode ends with Balin sending his men out go and to go and capture them. And that's basically the whole plot of the episode in a nutshell.
Now, the cool things that I want to bring up that are kind of like an Easter egg,
Mm-hmm.
we get our first look at live action Jason.
Yep.
And that's super exciting for me. So, Jason, for those that don't remember from our season 4 review, Jason is the son of Hera and Kanan. And we only see him briefly in the epilogue of Rebels with him and his mom flying somewhere in their ship. So, it's cool to see live action Jason here.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's brief. And I love how he says that he wants to be a Jedi because that's just so adorable.
Well, it brings up an interesting question, too. A lot of people I've been reading on Reddit have asked, does Jason know that his dad's a Jedi? Because the way he says, I want to be a Jedi, it's not, it didn't seem like he was saying it because he wants to honor his dad. He was saying it more like, that's a cool thing that I want to do one day, just like any kid
Yeah.
might say, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up, or something like that. It wasn't like I want to be a Jedi to honor my father. It was more of a, ooh, I'll be an astronaut. That sounds like fun.
It's weird how no one has mentioned Kanan by name. Like, even when Hera was talking about how she wants revenge on Thrawn, like, she says that Thrawn has taken people away that from her that mean dearly to her. Okay, people who have seen Rebels know who she's talking about, but she never mentions Kanan by name. Like,
It's interesting that she does that, and I agree that's odd. And
and isn't it also odd how no one ever brings Kanan up when uh, Ahsoka's putting Sabine through that lightsaber training? Because Kanan originally trained her on that with
and
the dark
Kanan did the same
saber.
stuff.
Yeah,
No, I think there's something to it. I just don't know what. But of course, that might be my fanboy within me hoping for something to be there. Like I know Kanan's not going to come back, but like some kind of reference or something later would be good. And I'm hoping we get that later.
but it is great that he appears here, because the funny thing is that Hera herself has gone on to appear in some other things. Like, I haven't read this book series yet, but Star Wars Explained is a huge fan of this book series. It's called Alphabet Squadron, which revolves around like a squadron of like rebel pilots in the post Battle of Endor era. Apparently, Hera appears in like one or two books of that series, and they mention Jason, but he never appears. So this is like, I mean, and he doesn't say anything in the Rebels epilogue. So this is like his first speaking role in the show, in any Star Wars media. So it's pretty cool, and I really hope that we get to see him more frequently.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point we'll have a Jason focused thing. I hope it'd be cool.
Like, I mean, I don't. Maybe the time. Maybe he'd be a little too old. Although maybe not actually. Like, maybe he could be part of Rey's little future Jedi Order in the post sequel trilogy era.
I don't know about that because by that point Jason would be like 30, 40 years old.
Yeah, well, it's better than him being part of Luke's Jedi Order and having been killed by Kylo Ren.
Okay, when you put it that way, you're right.
Because Rey would be around Jason's age too, around this time. Maybe a
Yeah.
little bit younger, but
I'd have to look it up on Wikipedia,
yeah.
but yeah.
Um, but yeah, seeing Jason was pretty awesome. My one thing that I really love, like and maybe this is done in Resistance. I don't know, although actually no, given the time period, maybe it's not done, since I don't think the period would align with it. But one of my favorite parts was the scene with Hera and the New Republic Council, because I'm a huge fan of how the the new canon really tries to add a lot of grayness as opposed to the black and white era, where like, I feel like you would think that they would be like, oh well, of course the New Republic is perfect because they're not the Empire. The Empire was horrible and they did all these horrible things. But then here we see the New Republic, and they are denying and they're just ignoring something that's a very real threat, which could lead to a big threat coming up many years later. And spoiler alert, a huge threat does come on later. But everybody's seen the sequel trilogy, so they'll know that.
We're sorry.
Yeah. Um, and they're refusing to help someone who was a huge help to their original cause, because they don't think it matches their strategic interests. Like, I love how they're showing flaws in the New Republic Senate. And I don't think they're trying to make Mon Mothma look bad, because she's just like, she's the chancellor, but she wants the Senate to have a really big call. And it's clear that there's this one senator, Zionu. I'll go into more detail on him a little bit later, but
Yeah.
he's clearly being kind of a jerk. So that was one of my favorite things. Like, I love how they're not trying to make the New Republic this perfect entity that can do no wrong because, hey, they're not the Empire, so they must be perfect. Like, no, they're better
Well,
than the Empire, but they got a lot of issues.
they're also, in my opinion, still very weak because they're still forming and adapting to the new paradigm after the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's acceptable for them to be kind of rough around the edges, as you might say.
Yep.
And I mean, watching this episode, I think I even texted you this, or I texted somebody this. Man, I can see exactly how the First Order came in and started cleaning house. Like, now it makes sense because the
Yeah.
New Republic is not perfect.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that. Mentioned that to me.
Yeah.
I mean, if you read the book Bloodline, they go into more detail of how the First Order was born from like the internally from the New Republic, but it's
Mhm.
only subtly hinted in that book.
Yeah.
But one scene that and you'll love this if you're a Clone Wars fan, is the space battle scene. Like Ahsoka putting on a spacesuit and like flying around on a ship and slicing up starfighters with their lightsabers. That's a scene ripped straight out of a Clone Wars episode, and to see that in live action, that was so awesome.
That's awesome. It was a really great moment. Like, you can definitely tell Ahsoka is Anakin's student in that moment when she goes in the spacesuit out there to fight fighters or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the space battle was also really well done. I can't remember. I don't think there were any real space battles in Kenobi, but
Mm-mm.
there's occasional ones in the Mandalorian that they're done pretty good. But this feels a lot like I'm watching like a big budget like Star Wars movie in the theaters with how the space
This
battle was directed.
this feels like the prequel trilogy effects to me, and I love it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even think. Okay, so I'll be honest. I haven't seen the sequel trilogy since, was it 2018 or 2019 when Rise of Skywalker came out?
2019.
I haven't seen the sequel trilogy since 2019. So I might be misremembering, but I don't even think they had any like big epic battle like this. I mean, they had battles in space, obviously, but I don't think they were as well done as this one was, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
what do I know? I'd have to watch it again, and I don't know when I'm going to do that.
Do you have any other positive, big, cool moments that I didn't drop that you might want to mention, Riz?
Um, I think one interesting thing that you and I talked about earlier offline, Nate,
Mm-hmm.
Hugh Wang brings up a very interesting thing about
Oh, yep, yep.
Sabine's Jedi lineage. So he says Ahsoka comes from a long line of non-traditional Jedi, and when you look back at her master tree, and I'm going to read your list off here, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
It goes Ahsoka, trained by Anakin, who's trained by Obi-Wan, who's trained by Qui-Gon, who's trained by Count Dooku, who's trained by Yoda. And of that list I just told y'all, the only person that I would even remotely consider traditional is Obi-Wan. And maybe Yoda, we can make a case either way for him.
Did you understand my logic that we spoke off screen about why Obi-Wan is largely traditional?
Oh no, okay. So to clarify, and I'll read this out for the people that don't know our prior conversation. But so Nate says he can buy off on Yoda being not traditional and Obi-Wan being traditional, and that's because Obi-Wan was more adherent to the will of the Council, and he often had disagreements with Qui-Gon over stuff frequently. And while he was occasionally skeptical and he had Anakin's back, he ultimately always deferred to the Council. Like, he voted for Ahsoka's expulsion, but he was not 100% behind it, but he did it because the Council, for the most part, wanted to. So, yeah, he's traditional in that way. and I definitely agree with that. I wasn't trying to tell you that I don't think Obi-Wan is not traditional. I was just asking you for clarification if those are the two that you thought were traditional, because
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
yeah. Because
So
it's also because like I read one book called Master and Apprentice, which is all about the relationship between Obi Wan and Qui Gon. And a huge thing that Qui Gon notes is that Qui Gon thinks that he thinks that the council is wise, but he has issues with it, while Obi Wan just thinks the council knows best. The council's great. All hail the
yeah.
council, basically.
Well, and honestly, so the reason I consider Yoda more towards the not traditional is because it's something Qui Gon does. Qui Gon is, to my knowledge, the first Force wielder to learn how to become a Force ghost, to have his spirit become one with the Force once he died.
Yep.
I don't think anyone had done it prior to him. In much the same way, Yoda did something similar with his ability to force sense and communicate with those on different planets in the way that he does. I don't think other Jedi, aside from maybe Luke, has been able to do that since Yoda, or at least not as accurately or as well as Yoda can do it. I might be wrong on that, though. I don't know, but that's my thought process here. And so my thinking is the more innovative people that bring new things and new tricks to the Force, they're not going to be the traditional Force wielder.
Yeah.
What do you think? I don't know if there's anyone else that does what Yoda does. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, because you've read more of the books than I have.
I don't like maybe if I once I get to the High Republic books that I'm going to be reading, maybe, but there's no Jedi that I've read that's been like that I would say is on the level of Yoda in terms of like just wisdom and everything. Like I'm sure like there's definitely a lot of Jedi that I feel like are much more powerful than Yoda was. Like obviously I think Anakin or Luke in terms of raw power is
Mace.
but yeah, Mace Windu too. But I feel like Yoda is just like I don't know. There's a reason why whenever somebody wants to refer to someone as like the wisest of all people, they say the Yoda of X because I just don't
Yeah.
think there's anyone. And maybe when I go to the High Republic era, I'll see somebody different. But as of right now, I don't know anybody better than Yoda
Yeah.
in that regard.
So yeah, I mean, we have these non-traditional people that have all trained one another going down the line to Ahsoka. And now Ahsoka, a non-traditional Force wielder, former Jedi, is training somebody with, in the words of Hugh Yang, the worst connection to the Force he's ever seen in the
Mm-hmm.
entirety of his like time as a robot. And it's interesting that Ahsoka picked Sabine or agreed to help Sabine. The exact nature how this arrangement began is unknown to us, but in any event, if Sabine went to her and said, "I want to learn the ways," and Ahsoka said, "Fine," or Ahsoka told her, "Let me teach you," for her own reasons, we don't know, but I think it's interesting that Ahsoka took her on regardless, because that tells me that she's trying to build something a bit different than what the Jedi have been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it might be cool to have Luke do a cameo at some point in this little season to help Sabine. That'd be pretty cool, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I doubt it.
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, even if it doesn't happen, I mean, I trust. I think Dave Filoni is just like Dave Filoni knows best. So,
Dave Filoni definitely knows best.
by the way, on a side note, I know this is kind of a tangent, but I actually read someone recently. Do you know someone who met? For all the people who have issues with the sequel trilogy, like if there's someone who is more hated than Kathleen Kennedy, it's Ryan Johnson. Did you know that Dave Filoni was partially mentored by Rian Johnson on the set of The Last Jedi? So
I'm
we
not
we have to
I'm not
respect him for that.
surprised. No, I see Ryan's influence. Now that you mention it on what Dave Filoni does,
Hmm.
I can see it. But I also think Dave Filoni, while he might have been inspired by Ryan Johnson in some of what he did, I think Dave Filoni had his own vision and his own plan from the get go.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna say that from day one in what 2008 or 2007
Hmm.
when the Clone Wars movie first came out that he had this grand vision for Ahsoka to go on for this long and appear in so many different things.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he had that planned, but he definitely has the vision for what helps the franchise the most. Because when Dave Filoni came in, the prequels were the most hated thing among fans. Nobody
Hmm.
liked the prequels. But then, myself included, when we started watching Clone Wars and Rebels and kind of digging deeper into what Filoni brought us, the the perception shifted. Now, I still don't care for episode 1 and 2 all that much, but I definitely have respect for episode 2 and 3 a lot more now
Yeah.
because Filoni's depiction of Anakin has gone a long way to fix my perception of the prequel trilogy. Now, Filoni is doing something very similar here with the live action Mandoverse TV shows of Mando, Boba Fett, and now Ahsoka. And I think he is starting to do that damage control that we need to help us understand the prequel trilogy. Now, there's some stuff in the prequel trilogy that I'm still skeptical on if we'll ever truly feel better about, even with Filoni's magic. But only time will tell, really.
Yep. I mean, I also bring that up just to say that, I mean, I'm not, I don't know how I feel about J.J. Abrams with the two movies that he directed, but I know this might be an unpopular opinion in Star Wars, but I actually respect Ryan Johnson. Like, I liked the direction that he took with The Last Jedi, and I know that's going to get, that might give me a little bit of hate, but yeah, that's my opinion. I like the direction, and I honestly think that if Ryan Johnson got to direct that whole trilogy, it would have been a little bit better.
And with that comment, we have gotten our first 1-star review ever on iTunes or Spotify.
Yeah, well, it is
Just
what it
just
is.
wait, it's gonna happen.
It is what it is.
But I share your opinion, Nate. For anyone else who wants to write a 1-star review about me doing the same thing,
Yeah,
I actually thought Ryan's movie was the best of the three from the
yeah,
sequel trilogy.
yep.
Like, it definitely has its faults,
Hmm.
and there are definitely things that I wish were done differently. We'll get into what those are when we get to that movie review, but just know that I have my grievances with some of Luke's characteristics, but overall, I can respect what Ryan was going for here.
Yeah, and you might ask how this relates. Like, I just bring it up because, like, Ryan, like, Dave Filoni looks up heavily to Ryan Johnson. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody likes to say that Dave Filoni is like the current George Lucas for Star Wars. Well, Dave Filoni has a lot of respect for that guy. And
No, Dave Filoni's better than George Lucas.
yeah, okay, yeah, let's be honest there. But what would we,
um,
but to kind of get back on subject here, what would we think about, this current episode? Like, just, like, any closing thoughts on it?
so my favorite parts of this episode we've already talked about, but to recap it real quick, I liked the insight into the New Republic. I thought that was interesting to finally get because we've been kind of, we've been seeing this world post Return of the Jedi for a couple of years now with Mando and Book of Boba Fett. But this is the first time we really see what the New Republic is up to and how they operate, who's in charge, what's the climate like. So that to me, as a political nerd, was very interesting. And then as a fanboy really, watching the space battle was a lot of fun. And Ahsoka's spacesuit scene is probably one of my favorite moments in Star Wars now.
Yeah.
Top 10 at the very least. So those are my thoughts. I thoroughly enjoyed the episode. I think just to kind of give some more of an update on my earlier, I don't want to call it a concern, but I was definitely not feeling Hera in episode 1 as being true to Hera in Rebels, but the more I see Hera, the more I see Rebels Hera here. And, I know I said last time that I was more reconciled to the fact that this was Hera, but episode 3 has gone further to cement my initial reservation was unfounded. Also, Chopper's the best.
Mm-hmm. Okay, before we, I've pretty much said my piece. So before we just kind of give our final ratings and, our thoughts, since we don't miss it this time, I want to shine a light. They're not as many since it's only one episode this time, but I did want to bring up some of the references and Easter eggs. So for starters, we get I don't know if this was meant to be a reference to A New Hope or not, but I'm 99% sure that it was. During the scene where Ahsoka is training Sabine, she gives Sabine a helmet to cover her face, similar to what Obi-Wan did in A New Hope. And Sabine actually makes a similar remark to Luke. In A New Hope, Luke says, "But with the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?" And here Sabine says, "I can't see. How am I supposed to fight?" So that's pretty cool. There's a fighting technique that Ahsoka references called Satoshi. Now, at first I thought that this was supposed to be a lightsaber fighting style based on Legends, but it apparently isn't. But a possible reference is that it's a reference to a blind samurai character, fictional samurai character called Satoichi. And the reason why this might be possible is because this blind samurai character was a huge inspiration for Chirrut Imwe, who is that blind force monk character in Rogue One. So yeah, I'm willing to bet that's probably it. One of the senators speaking to Hera is Hamato Ziono. He is the senator of the planet Hosnian Prime, which is going to be the planet that gets destroyed by Starkiller Base in The Force Awakens. And he's apparently the father of the main character of the Resistance animated series, Kazuda Ziono. Again, I haven't watched Resistance yet, so I wouldn't know. But he's made a few appearances on said series. Although, if he's anything like what he is in this episode, I'm probably not going to like him. Hera claims to have encountered Imperial loyalists in the Santhe shipyards. We actually see this location in Solo: A Star Wars Story. It's where Han crashes his speeder while he's trying to escape a gang in the beginning, while he's still with Kira, or whatever the name of the character was, played by Daenerys Targaryen's actress.
Emilia Clarke?
Yeah. And this other one, this isn't a reference to Star Wars. It's actually an Indiana Jones reference. During the space battle, Hu Yang screams, "This is intolerable," which is the catchphrase of Henry Jones Sr., Sean Connery's character in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which I love that. That's my favorite Indiana Jones movie. So if they want to make references to that, I'm all for it.
Hey, more power to them.
Yeah, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast. I still need to see the last movie. And I don't hate the fourth movie as much as everybody else does, but it's still not my thing. Like, I'm actually a big fan of the Indiana Jones movie, so if they make references to this, you can bet that I'll probably catch them.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are all the references that I spotted.
So one thing I forgot to mention earlier, I don't know if you've seen a lot of this, Nate, but there's been a ton of speculation on Marrok's identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to talk about a couple of those fan theories that are running around out there. The first big one is people think Ezra is the guy behind the Marrok mask, and that he's either being controlled by Balin or he's working with them or something. And I just don't see it. Um, Rebels established that Ezra's already flirted with the dark side, and he grew strong enough to resist it. I don't think Filoni would undo that work. So I don't agree with that one. Um, there's also a fan theory that he's Star Destroyer from the Force Unleashed video game.
That's Star Killer, not Star
Star
Destroyer.
Killer. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. But I haven't played that game, so I don't know much about the character. But that'd be interesting if it was. But I don't know. Enough about it. Maybe you do.
I don't see how that. Okay, like, I mean, his story is that he was the son of a Jedi Master that Darth Vader tracked to Kashyyyk in the early Empire days, and then Vader killed him, and then took him in as his secret apprentice, and then he turned on Vader, and he was supposedly killed. But then Vader, this is the character Star Killer. Vader created a clone of him, and in the second Force Unleashed game. I can't remember how the story of the second one goes though, because truth be told, the second Force Unleashed game is terrible. The first one is still great though.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't see how that would be possible though, because I mean, this was a character who was during Vader's time. So, and keep in mind,
Yeah.
and if he was a clone, which is what Starkiller is, then like this is a guy who's probably like at the very least like as old as Rex would have been during the time of Rebels. So I don't know how that would work. I mean,
Yeah.
Filoni, if you're listening to this, like, could you have it? Okay, maybe it doesn't have to necessarily be Marrok, but could we please bring Barra Sophie in as an Inquisitor,
Okay.
please?
So
I'm obsessed with that story
I
now.
I actually have two more theories, one of which you kind of touched on indirectly. So Merrick's other fan theory identity is that it's actually Barrett's Ophi.
I would love that.
And I would love that too, because that would be perfect given Barris and Ahsoka have all that history and they could, have one last go at it before everything happens.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great. And then the last one, I haven't read this book, so I'm a little bit less aware of how things happen in there, but apparently in Heir to the Empire, Luke has faced a clone of himself, so it's possible.
Yeah, he does. Well, not in the Heir to the Empire, in the last episode of in the last book of the Thrawn trilogy, which is called The Last Command.
Okay. And these are the 90s Thrawn books, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I'd be very interested to know more about this, but the theory people are saying is Marrok is actually the failed clone of Anakin himself.
Mm-hmm.
That was created for events with Rise of Skywalker. And I hope not. But I also can see why people think that, because we do know Hayden Christensen will be back in some capacity in here. We just don't know how. And that'll be certainly a very interesting way to tie this to the sequels while giving Hayden a chance to play himself in modern time as himself and not the suit.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting. I just don't know how I feel about it being a failed clone of Anakin.
The clone would make sense though, because they've apparently confirmed in the novelization, but the Palpatine that we see in Rise of Skywalker, that's not Palpatine. That's a clone of Palpatine.
Yeah. it's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the theories that I was reading about that I made a note of.
Also want
Not
to
really.
sorry, Riz, go ahead.
No, good.
I know this doesn't relate to anything, but speaking of Barra Sophia, I actually just found this out a little while ago. Apparently, there was supposed to be a scene in Revenge of the Sith where Barra Sophia was shown getting killed on Felucia during Order 66. Like an AT-AT like shoots and kills her, and then like it literally stomps on her after killing her, and kind of convenient that they cut that scene out, because if you know what happens to her in Clone Wars, people are going to be like, wait a minute, she shouldn't be fighting there. Like, thank God that scene was cut and is apparently not considered canon anymore. But
That's good.
yeah, but can we please just? I want to see Barra Sophie and Ahsoka fight, because what she did to Ahsoka was horrible,
Yeah.
and I just want to see there be justice for Ahsoka and justice against Barra Sophie.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We need that.
Yeah. And I'm gonna give you a warning. I know that Filoni's probably not listening to this, but I'm gonna bring this. I'm gonna bring this up every podcast now, just until Filoni does it. Like, do it, because I'm not gonna shut up until he does it.
Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't.
Yeah. But what will we give this episode out of 10?
I'd go with a 9 here.
Yeah, I'd give it a 9 too. I just hope that I'm just really hoping that by episode 5 we're exploring this new galaxy where that Thrawn is supposedly in, because I'm really excited about seeing what this new galaxy looks like.
Oh yeah, me too.
Oh, and I forgot to mention this in the references before we close out. We see the Purrgils in live action
Yeah,
for the first time here
that's
during the
really
space
cool.
battle. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I should have brought that up
Yeah.
before. I think they were referenced in one episode of The Mandalorian. I do remember like them mentioning the space whales, which is like a different term for the Purrgils.
Mhm.
But yeah. But was there anything else you wanted to bring up in this podcast?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm good to go.
Okay. Well, in that case, just a heads up, guys. We might be able to do the fourth one on time, but if not, we might do 4 and 5 together. My wife and I are going to be out of town for Labor Day weekend, which is going to be after. It might be Labor Day weekend by the time this is posted, but as of the recording of this, Labor Day weekend is the upcoming weekend. So, but we'll try to get episode 4 posted on time. And as Riz said, we're going to be posting our first review of the Thrawn books on it. So
Mhm.
we hope you guys will check that out. I'm trying to finish. I'm going to try to finish my reading of A Shadow of the Sith by next month, and then get a review for you guys out on that. So I hope you guys will check that out. And we got a lot of other things planned.
Yeah.
And we hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, even some of the more controversial opinions that we might have. But if you disagree, you can feel free to comment down below, because we're always welcome to having discussion, even with people who don't agree with us, because we're not going to be one of those gatekeeping fans. That's the beauty of having a fandom. Not everybody has to agree on everything.
Yeah, definitely.
With that said, we are going to be. We want to give a shout out to everybody who watches us on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. Leave us any reviews. If you listen to us on iTunes and Spotify, you can give us feedback on our website, animesecrets.org. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribed. Like this video, leave comments down below. We do like to read any comments that we might get on YouTube during a little segment. And that's about it. We once again thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to us, and we will catch you again next time when we take a look at the next Ahsoka. But until that time, you guys stay safe. We love you, and may the Force be with you.